got sent aboard Independence, USS Independence, and we went to Vietnam. Went around. Most carriers were West Coast carriers, so we had to go around to Africa. Horrible, horrible trip, man.
The Horn of Africa, yeah.
The tip, you couldn't.
Now, why couldn't you go through the canal?
The ship was too big.
Oh.
But you had guys were tied together on the flight deck. I mean, it was just waves coming over the flight deck 95 feet.
Wow.
I mean, not you. If you were on a flight deck, you got wet. I mean, it was just angry.
Yeah.
And the destroyers next to us, they were like corks. They were just, you could see the props out of the water.
Wow.
It was a rough 3 or 4 days maybe going through there.
Around the Horn.
No, the Horn of Africa is up by Somalia and on the northeast corner. That's the Horn of Africa. This is everybody thinks that's a misnomer. The tip of Africa is in the south. I remember what the straits are. I can't remember.
Yeah. And where were you headed?
We went to our first. I think it took us about 28 or 29 days. Our first port of call was Singapore, and a beautiful city. They let us be guests at a place called the British had a place called the Britannica Club, and get in fights with British sailors, things like that, and drink beer.
Nice.
And then we went to.
Who drank more, the Americans or the British?
You know, they had behind the bar. They had big barrels of beer, and they were just left open, just running glasses underneath them. You shut them off, and then they put lemonade in. I forget what that's called. They put a little drop of a couple of shots of lemonade in the beer.
What was the purpose of it?
That's just how they drank beer. It's called a Shanigan, or I forget what they call it.
Uh,
But anyway, after that, we went on the Tonkin Gulf and flew bombing missions in Vietnam. Sometimes at day, sometimes at night. And I was handling liquid oxygen. Planes would come in. The pilot would tell you how much oxygen if you needed it was so low you had to take the converter out of the airplane, fill it up with liquid oxygen, put it back in the plane. They use liquid oxygen, gases off, and they breathe. Because two pilots could use small containers like this. By the time it gassed off, it'd be a lot more than was in there. And that's what I did for 12, 14 hours a day.
Wow. That sounds a little monotonous. Huh?
Well, it wasn't a lot of fun. I mean, you worked, sometimes I worked on recovering aircraft, and sometimes I worked on the other shift, topping off every plane. The one crew would leave all the planes listed, which ones had to be serviced. And you went around with a cart and serviced all those planes. It was not, I was 18 years old. It was pretty exciting to be on a flight deck, and when you're 18, you're not afraid of a lot when you're 18 years old. You're on a flight deck. I wouldn't go up there now, but I'm saying it was pretty. Elevators. There's bombs. There's rockets. There's gasoline. There's JP5.
Yeah.
A lot of variables.
You don't want to smoke cigars around there.
You could smoke. When the smoking lamp was lit, you could smoke, but you couldn't.
Sounds like a lot of fuel. Surrounded by a lot of fuel.
A lot of fuel.
Yeah.
And rockets and bombs.
Yeah. And you were on the what was the ship?
I was on the USS Independence, CVA 62, I think.
That was a Forrestal class.
Forrestal class carrier that's now been decommissioned and it's been taken apart. They took it to Brownsville, Texas, and it was dismantled. That was when I was on there. I think the Forrestal was the top class of carriers. There was one nuclear carrier, was the Enterprise, who we relieved when we went to Vietnam. We relieved the USS Enterprise. 88,000 ton ship, 4,500 guys, maybe over 100 planes. We probably launched about maybe 25 planes for each sorties, and went out 25 planes.
So by this time you're off the coast of Vietnam?
Off the coast of Vietnam, the Tonkin Gulf. One time we were out for 92 days.
Wow.
No beer, no chicks. And but you know, you worked and you slept. Our line shack was right under the forward starboard catapult.
Mm-hmm.
And when those big Phantom planes like the Vigilantes and Phantoms being launched in Afterburner, you could feel those little bones in your ears vibrate. And our line shack was right directly below that catapult in a 12 by 12 steel bulkhead, steel overhead, steel floor. It was like it couldn't be worse. I mean, it was like you were being tortured.
Yeah.
And then at night, I was on the 03 level, which was right below the flight deck, on where the planes landed.
Wow.
So if you weren't getting, your ears weren't being punished on the takeoff. When the first plane to land when I went aboard that ship, I thought it was a crash. And the guy said, that was one of the light ones. Wait till the big ones come in. I said, I was brought up next to a waterfall. Listen, I said, I'll never sleep on this ship. I had my last night's sleep. It was beyond. It was like torture.
Wow. So, and one of your specialties was, you said in basic at least, was the ejection seat.
In A school, I worked. My trade was all the pilot environmental systems except parachutes, which means air conditioning, pressurization, oxygen, ejection seats, and a bleed air system, which I don't know. I still never knew what that was.
So I would think the pilots would have, appreciated your work. I would think, especially the ejections.
I never had a pilot use my ejection seat, but I think they were nicer to. I was an AME. I think they were nicer to AMEs because they knew that I put their seat in the plane or something.
You know, make sure those bolts are tight, whatever.
But you know, what's amazing is that you have 17, 18, 19-year-old kids working on extremely sophisticated, top-of-the-line aircraft and getting maintenance done. It's all done by a check and balance system. I do something, I check it off, and somebody comes behind me and checks that, and another person checks that. Like, I was in the A4 squadron. A4 is a small single pilot plane, and when you put them together, you had to put a clamp, like a huge muffler clamp that was like this big, and you had to stand in a hellhole, and you had to put this up like this, clamp it. Then after you got it clamped, you had to put a piece of safety wire through it, through the nut to a stud. Everything had to be safety wired. And the first time I did it, it probably took me 4 or 5 hours to put that clamp on there. And the guy kept saying, no, you'll get it, don't worry, you'll get it. But after you do a dozen of them, you do them in 15 minutes. You got the clamp on there, bolted, torqued, and safety wiring. But after the first time I did this is not possible. So, but
did anybody check your work after you did it?
A guy another second or third, first class guy would come in with a mirror and a flashlight and check and make sure it was safety wired right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing that young guys with 14, 15 weeks of training work on sophisticated planes.
That's the way it is today as well?
I imagine so.
Yeah. Yeah. So
planes are checked every so many hours. The engines are taken out. Everything's redone. All the compression, everything's looked at and rebuilt.
and
So
think of how even more sophisticated